Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Going Beyond Wolverhampton and Ramdan Radio Wolves. Today we are speaking to two LSE graduates who come from Blackburn and Darlaston respectively, and they're going to be talking about their own experiences about studying government and international relationships. First up, for the first half of the show, we have Adnan, who's currently a corporate banker at JP Morgan. Hey Adnan, how's it going?
Hi, Akmal. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, it's all good here. So Adnan, you're from Blackburn. What is Blackburn like as a town to grow up in?
Blackburn is a town to grow up in. It's very small, so you end up knowing everybody, or you end up knowing like a greater proportion of the people in the town. Definitely a strong sense of community there. So, and in my case, sort of growing up as a Muslim, a lot of that community is centered around your masjid. So, for example, with your friends, your like organizing activity might revolve around like Maghrib time or Isha time or things like that. So definitely sort of a strong religious element to it, which, I'm very grateful for. At the same time, there's also a lack of ambition in the town. So there's not many like role models, and there's not many people you can look up to with like a path to follow, which definitely leads to like people sort of limiting their expectations and their ambitions with what they want to do with their life, as opposed to, sort of broadening their horizons. Even if, for example, you come from like a similarly impoverished part of London or somewhere else, at least there you have like what's possible in front of you. Like if you live in East London, which is, definitely one of the poorer parts of England, you still have Canary Wharf and the city right next to you. So you can kind of see, even just literally, you can see what is in front of you. Whereas here, like, firstly, there's not enough good jobs up north. And, secondly, the schools and etc. aren't that good. So what you can physically see as being possible is very limited. And like moving to London and all these kinds of things are very abstract. It's a contrasting experience. There's definitely a strong element of community that I love, and that I'm very grateful having that sort of as part of my upbringing. But then at the same time, from an academic and sort of career ambition perspective, it's very limiting.
So what made you want to study politics and economics at university? Because it's a fairly unique kind of option to go down.
So my goal, like I said, I became serious about this stuff when I was in year 10. And my goal at the time was to go to Oxford, read PP, and then after graduating, there's like this big gap, and then eventually I become prime minister. So that's originally where like the inspiration came from. And I think that kind of morphed into just this general understanding that if you want to get somewhere, or you want to like be at the top, whatever it is, whether it's politics or any career, like it's massively advantageous to just go to an elite university. I like maths as like a general interest, but I'm not a mathsy person, like to the extent that you are, Akmal. Or like for me, it was just a case of I really like writing, and I'm quite good at it, and I'm really interested in politics, or I was at the time when I sort of made these decisions. And so I thought, okay, let me go and do this for 3 years, and then at the same time, it doesn't close any doors. I mean, obviously it closes the doors of like medicine, engineering, etc. But like, I would have made that decision a long time ago. So for me, it was like I can spend 3 years studying something I'm really interested in, and there's no downside to that. Economics was one of those things that like I really enjoyed it at A level, and then I got to university and I realized that it's just nothing like the A level syllabus, and I just didn't enjoy it. And it was basically just a bit of, like 75% maths with like a little bit of written explanation and stuff like that. And I just didn't enjoy it, and I didn't like see the value. And like I've come not to like the discipline of economics. Like I just don't see its value. And so at the start of my second year, I just decided to drop it because I wasn't enjoying it. And that's when I sort of shifted to do a full degree in government or political science, whatever you want to call it.
What did you do to help you in your application to university then before you applied?
Yeah, the college I went to. So I'm from Blackburn, but I actually went to a college in Preston because they had like schemes and a proper structure for helping students get to Oxbridge. So essentially, applying for Oxbridge was a great help in the sense that like they were very on it to make sure your personal statement was really good. So from sixth form, I got a lot of support in terms of how I'm structuring my personal statement and proofreading it and making sure I started early. Like the best piece of advice I got was starting in June, So you send your application off for Oxford in October. There's a specific deadline. That helps in two ways. Firstly, it helps you get your application in early for the rest of the unis, even if you're not really serious about going to Oxford. So starting very early helped because it just gave me time. Like at the start, my drafts were garbage, and it just helped me sort of get through that initial stage and move on from it. So that was a big thing. The second thing I'd say was in that summer between first year of sixth form, second year of sixth form, I did a work experience at JP Morgan for 2 weeks through the Social Mobility Foundation. And as part of that, in the evenings, they also gave us like sometimes like personal statement workshops. So that helped. The second biggest thing was I did a 1 week summer school at King's College London, and that was like a lot of that afterwards was they gave us they paired us with a university admissions tutor. Like mine was from the University of Middlesex, but these people were reading personal statements like every day, and they basically gave me advice on how to write my personal statement. There was this online platform I'd log into, and I'd submit a draft, and then they'd comment on it, and literally we went through this whole thing until like September, where we were iterating. So I'd submit a draft, they give comments. I'd submit a draft, they give comments, and that, to be honest, was like the main source of how I got help on my personal statement and learned how to do the structure. Later on, as it came close to the deadline, my sixth form was proofreading it and just sort of helping tie up loose ends and things like that. And so that's how I got my personal statement to a very high quality, to where it should have been. It also helps that like I had a very tangible interest in the subject that I was studying. Like I was actually like, when I reread my personal statement now, it's very clear the passion that I have for politics and economics, how it comes through. And I was already doing a lot of reading and in the subject. And some people do reading just for the sake of their personal statement, like because it's always good to talk about a book that you've read and like tangibly explain why you're interested in it. But like for me, like politics is such a big, like vast subject, and especially around the time I was applying, it was like becoming such like a bit more topical. But for me, I literally started my first sentence with, I'm interested in political institutions and how these interact with economic decision making. And that was genuinely like my prime motivation for studying it. That's at a very concrete level what motivated me. So that kind of thread stayed through. So it's very obvious to like an academic or a personal statement reader who's looking at my personal statement. They're like, okay, this person has a genuine interest in the topic. So all of that combined really sort of helped make my personal statement stand out.
So, and then you went to the London School of Economics to study your subject. What was it like going to the LSE?
So whenever I answer this question, which I've given like tons of answers to this question recently, whenever I always contrast between like the academic experience and the social experience. And the academic experience for me was everything you could have wanted from your university time. Like I was pushed, I was challenged, I learned so much, I grew a lot intellectually as a person. How I think about politics massively changed. And, at the end of the 3 years, intellectually, I'm a completely different person to the person I was when I started. So, and I got taught by some world-class professors, like experts in their field, everything. Like if you had like a bucket list of what you wanted from an educational experience, I literally ticked everything off. But from a social and life perspective, it wasn't great at all. And there's a few reasons for that, some personal to me and some sort of generally applicable. The personal ones were like, well, I was working part-time while I was studying. So that massively ruined my social life. And especially because I was doing, like in my second year, I was doing night shifts at the Sainsbury's. So I was doing like 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., which ruins your sleep, ruins your health, ruins your socializing time because your sleep pattern gets disturbed and your study time gets disturbed and all that sort of stuff. So things like that were generally like, for like personal to me. Also, like I moved from Blackburn to London, which is a massive leap, and it was very difficult and at times very isolating. Being away from family and missing your friends and all that sort of stuff, and not having many people like you. Like I was very fortunate that my best friend, who I'd known for at that point like 7 years, had moved to London as well and studied at the LSE. So I had somebody, but that's only one person. Like it doesn't replace like having like all of your friends or like having people you feel very comfortable with there with you. So there's that. Then there's the like universal experience that I'm sure a lot of LSE students go through. It's a very tiny uni. Like there's only 10,000 students at that uni. In comparison, like King's and UCL have like 20 to 30,000 students. Manchester has like 30,000 students. So it's just this very small university, and everybody does like the same because it's just a social sciences uni. So everybody does like the same subjects. So they kind of attract the same personality type. So you're kind of meeting the same people. And the final thing is like it's a bastion of privilege. Like the elite of the elite go to that university. Like some people aren't even interested in Oxbridge. They go straight for LSE because it's in London. And it actually has like you get better career prospects going to LSE for certain sectors than going to Oxbridge, which is pretty bizarre. But there's that, and so you just have all these like very wealthy people who are very privileged and slightly ignorant in their own ways, and so it's hard to mix. And then the third thing is like the obsession over career. So like I said, it's going to LSE for some sectors gets you better job prospects than going to Oxbridge. And there's this massive career obsession, and it kind of leads to this toxic culture at the university. Even if you're not like directly involved in like, let's say you didn't want to pursue one of those careers, you still get like secondhand stress, and you kind of get FOMO from not doing it. Not that I, had any of that, but there's just this environment that isn't very healthy towards careers. And so all of that contributes to like kind of a crap social experience.
And so now I want to focus on a more positive side of LSE because you did mention the academic experience at LSE you found was very rewarding for yourself. So can you explain like what about it made it so interesting for you?
I think it's just the depth and the rigor you go into when you're studying a degree in political science, and it was nothing like I thought it would be at A level, which I'm glad about. So I learned a lot of. So I essentially took two routes in my degree because the thing with the political science degree at LSE is you can massively specialize, and so essentially I chose like two specialisms. One was like the EU, so I took more modules on like Brexit, the EU, its governance, etc. And then I had the second route of like democracy and democratization and things like that. And they're just massive, like exploring these things in the depths that I did was just so interesting and so rewarding. And I just found it like really, really intriguing. And, in addition to like the broad knowledge of like learning about these things, that you pick up a lot of, I call them like intellectual crutches. These are like concepts and terms and things that just describe like phenomena that exist that like you knew were true in your head, but you just didn't have the language to describe them. So I feel like I've also come out with like all this great knowledge and insight and a great way to think about politics, and a completely different way to think about politics than I did coming in. But at the same time, I've also come out with like this massively like broadened like intellectual horizon in terms of like the way in which I can describe things and articulate things is a lot better. And the way in which I think about problems as well, like I can take some of those principles and apply them to like my work and my day-to-day life, like just these little intellectual nuggets that I just find that are really useful. So all of that combined makes for like a fantastic university experience. It's also one of the few times that you can like nerd out in your life like unapologetically, and so that's always pretty fun. So all of that combined makes for a really great university experience, academically speaking.
It's quite interesting, Zero, because like I did a very quantitative degree at LSE, and I found I wouldn't say the opposite, but I wouldn't say I had as much like freedom per se, and I think that comes part and part with because with at least with qualitative work, like there's no right and wrong per se. Like there's no ways to figure out a problem. Whereas quantitative subjects, you have to think, okay, there is a right answer to this problem. There's a right answer to this. It's either right or wrong. It's very binary, so it gets you. So you don't really escape that mindset that you had at school. And it's something like I personally like wish I had more of my university experience where like I like when you talk about your degree, sometimes I have a bit of envy, it sounds like really cool what you're doing. And I was like saying like, hey, do this equation. Okay. And that was it.
Yeah.
Like a few years like don't get me wrong, I like doing maths and all, but like it's just a way like I think it was taught, like it just didn't there's no like change from when I was at school. So even though you expressed your joy and interests in politics and government, you didn't actually end up going down this route after university, did you? You're currently a investment banker at JP Morgan. So you mentioned that you also did like work experience at JP Morgan even before you went to university as well.
Yeah.
So do you think? So what made you go down this route in the first place? Like what made you want to become a banker at JP?
So small clarification: I'm not an investment banker. I'm a corporate banker.
Okay.
So I work in the corporate side, which I can get into, if you're interested. But essentially, so I kind of realized, and this is probably one of the main ways my thinking about politics has changed. Like studying a degree in politics is probably the worst qualification for going into politics. And the reason why I say that is because politics is like it's not to get too deep, but like life breathes in like what the essence of politics. Like politics isn't this thing. It's people's shared experiences, it's their lives, it's what they do, etc. And it's how we, to use more pretentious language, solve conflict. So essentially you need people who have lives to go into politics and use those lived experiences to influence things. So me with my political science degree, what lived experience do I have? And to be honest with you, like I'm very young and I haven't had much life experience yet anyways. So it's like, what would I do in politics? And also like the climate at the time and still currently, it's a very toxic political environment and it's not the type of thing I want to, get into. At the same time, it's also really hard and becoming an MP is, not the easiest or even a guaranteed route. So essentially, I'm holding out for something that might not even happen. Contrast that to banking, like I said, I had all these experiences beforehand, which basically put me into a very good position when I'm at university to apply. And these are very competitive programs. And yet the experiences I had basically kind of meant that I was guaranteed like an interview or an assessment center just because my CV stood out so much. So it's like you have this really great opportunity in a really competitive sector. Why don't you take it? And also it's like, yeah, okay, cool. I'll go and do that. And it's not like I'm tying myself down. Like, it's a long life. I can do many things with it. So, it's not like I'm tied myself down to banking. So ultimately it was a case of like this opportunity is too good to ignore, which is what informed my decision to go work for JP Morgan.
So you also mentioned earlier on about like at the moment you're doing a lot of work in Blackburn,
Yeah,
so community work and so on. So what do you get up into? What exactly are you doing in Blackburn?
yeah. So what am I doing in Blackburn? So since I got to university, I kind of made it my sort of thing of like helping students apply for university and giving them good advice to the best of my ability and all that sort of stuff and career advice as I got a bit older. And that was very much on an ad hoc basis. And now like I've been volunteering or been a part of an organization since I was like 15, 16, who basically have given me free rein to run a project. So this project, it's called the Zenith Project. It's like an educational initiative, which is basically like an alternative to tutoring, which I don't think works as well. And essentially it's teaching you how to learn. So the idea is that I teach students study skills. Although I am looking to like expand and modify and like basically build a bigger team because right now like I'm in charge of like 17 students and I don't think that's sustainable. So I want to like break it down and each student has like a dedicated mentor, like one mentor for like every 5 students or something like that. And then they can meet on a more regular basis and it's not as big a time commitment for the mentors. But essentially it's I call it mentoring as opposed to tutoring, but essentially we're teaching students study skills. So this can be very basic stuff like learning how to make a timetable, learning how to make notes, learning how to memorize notes, all these little things that you kind of need to do to study effectively. And another big one is like using the internet as a resource. So like, I don't think schools teach you how to use Google and the internet and scour the web for good teaching resources that you can use in your own time to enhance your own learning. Because if you start from the premise that schools in Blackburn aren't good, you kind of need to do a lot of learning in your own time. And effectively, you need to know how to do that. And so if you teach your students how to learn themselves, that's a lifelong skill. Like as you get through the education system, it gets more and more independent. Like school is spoon feeding you, college less so, still a bit. Then you go to university and you're on your own quite a bit. And then when you get to work, there's an expectation that you self-learn a lot yourself. Essentially, this for me is like a big life skill and it has a big payoff. As opposed to tutoring, which is exam specific, subject specific, and has limited upside, and essentially it could end up being a waste of money. So that's sort of what I'm doing, focusing on educationally, because it's where I see myself having the biggest contribution given my experiences.
Okay, so you said that tutoring doesn't exactly, well, to phrase what you said earlier, you said tutoring doesn't exactly work, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I come from an Asian community and tutoring culture is quite big in our community. Like kids are often put in tutoring at a young age, and they kind of
Yeah,
see it
yeah.
as like a fix all to all the problems. Like, do you think there's a issue with the mentality, especially people in our communities have when it comes to tutoring?
But I think it's a case of like feeling like you need to chuck money at a problem to solve it. Like if you're not going to send your kid to private school, you're essentially every parent, I think, wants to almost try to like confer private school advantages without paying for private school. And they
Yeah.
think tutoring is a great way to do that. Yeah, I completely disagree. Like tutoring is not the way to do that. For me, it's just another like it's like a crutch. It's something, it's a support tool you use to get you through it. But I would say like its limits are exposed when you look at how many tutors there are at GCSE level versus how many there are at A level, and there aren't that many because it kind of reaches the point where you can't tutor these subjects as effectively as you could. And so, my point is that tutoring doesn't work in the sense that it's not sustainable. It might get you from a C to a B or from like a 5 to a 6 or whatever. Um, it might make that small marginal difference, but take the tutor away afterwards, and you're left with a student who's, massively dependent on, somebody being there to help them. And they kind of need to learn to not have people there to help them and to do it themselves. So, from a self-reliance point of view, which is the premise of the Zenith project, your tutoring doesn't help in that respect. It's basically just subject-specific knowledge, which, eventually isn't a useful long-term tactic in terms of learning how to learn. So that's my problem with tutoring. As far as the Asian community goes, well, I personally think that alternatives haven't been presented to them. Like tutoring is all That's what you think. Oh, if my son or daughter is struggling with a subject, what do I do? They need more time in school. They need more attention. Blah blah blah. A tutor does those things. So what we're trying to do now, or what I'm trying to do now, is present an alternative and say, wait a minute, let's take a more long-term perspective on this issue and the issue of your kids' education. All right. If it sometimes it is genuinely subject specific. I'm not knocking tutoring as a whole. I'm knocking its use as this sort of catch-all, be-all and end-all solution to your problems because it is not that. It is not that solution. What it is it can be used if it's used in a very limited, targeted, specific way to help certain instances that can be useful. Whereas if you have a student whose problem is they're not a good student, giving them maths and English tuition isn't going to help them become a better student. Teaching them how to be a better student is going to help in that. Whereas if you have a very good student who struggles with quadratic equations and sketching graphs in maths, then a maths tutor who is going to help them think about that in a different way will be useful. Different problems require different solutions. And so my view of the problem is that not enough students, or in fact, most students aren't taught how to be good students, and they're not taught how to learn effectively. And so that's sort of where we're going with this project.
Okay, so at the moment, this project, is it just you who's running the show? Is it a one-man show?
It's a one-man show currently, and I kind of thought that would work, but started to have a few sessions, and it's just firstly it's a massive time commitment because I'm doing like an hour, half an hour every month with 17 students, which is I have to do it over 2 weekends. So that's essentially 2 weekends of my month gone. So from that perspective, it's not optimal. The other thing is like once a month for half an hour isn't useful. So I want to increase the amount of time I'm having with the students, but to do that, I need to expand. So I'm looking into the thing is, I want this to be very Blackburn focused at the moment. Like this is a project run by somebody who's gone to LSE, got a good job, alhamdulillah, from Blackburn. I want them to be mentoring other Blackburn students and to give them like a very tangible progression path that they can see themselves as. And so I kind of want, so I'm looking for, people who've done similar things in Blackburn to, join the team and, to become mentors and to help sort of do this. The other thing is this is like a multi-year project. So we actually didn't take on students who are in year 10 and above. We're only taking students on who are in year 7 to 9 because we want like 2 to 4 years to work with them on their skill set. The other reason is that like with COVID, I essentially view every student as like a year behind. So essentially I'm working with years. So if you take that view of I'm working with year 7s to 9s, but they're all a year behind, I'm really working with year 6 to 8s because, they've lost a year of learning. And what I kind of want to teach them is the resiliency of like, hopefully something like this never happens again. But let's say it did, right? would you be able to effectively remove the school from the equation and carry on your learning? And would you know how to? Okay, whether you do or you don't is a different problem. But as long as you know how to, as long as you have the skills and the knowledge and the ability to, that's fine, because then you can self-teach.
On the topic of asking my listeners something, what's the one thing you want them to take away from our conversation today?
What's the one thing I want your listeners to take away from this conversation today? Being invested in your local community is so important, and that everybody has something to contribute. And I think that would make communities like Wolverhampton, like Blackburn, which don't have a lot of the advantages that other communities have, a lot better. And so I think everybody has something to contribute, and I hope they all see themselves as resources to be used for the benefit of their community.
Awesome, inspiring words, Adnan. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you very much, Akmal.
This is Ramadan Radio. Little Dessert Shop continues to expand with stores in Bilston, Wolverhampton and Wednesfield. During Ramadan, we're celebrating our show-stopping dunking box for only £25. Feed the family with this exquisitely presented iftari gift, featuring the best from our menu. Enter Ramadan 25 at the checkout on our incredible new website. Visit littledessertshop.co.uk today. The holy month of gifting. From all at Little Dessert Shop, we'd like to wish you a blessed Ramadan and a huge Eid Mubarak.
Do you have a family member that's passed away and you would like someone to assist you in legal advice? Kenneth Jones Solicitors has been providing legal services for businesses and individuals since 1986. We specialise in probate, Islamic wills and family law. We also offer services in conveyancing, immigration and personal injury. Contact us today on 01902 745 773 or visit us on our website at kenneth-jones.co.uk.
Mubi Base Electronics, specialist in car audio and home entertainment. Suppliers of leading brands, Samsung, Sony, and Panasonic. We supply and fit all car audio systems, top brands, Kenwood, Bose, and we're an authorized supplier of Vibe product. Visit our store online at mubibase.co.uk and order today for next day delivery. Mubi Base Electronics are proud sponsors of Wolverhampton Wanderers FC. Call us today for a free quote on 01902 754 546 and quote Ramadan 20 for 10% off. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Mubi Base Electronics, specialist in car audio and home entertainment.
Is your home protected from the unexpected? It can be with Home Cover Plan, Wolverhampton's fastest growing home emergency cover from as little as $14.50 a month. That's right, for just $14.50 a month, Home Cover Plan will protect your boiler, radiators, electrics, plumbing and any other home emergencies with no catches, no call-out charges and no excess charges plus a boiler service. What's more, for Ramadan 2020, we're offering 15% off our policies with the code Ramadan15. Go to homecoverplan.co.uk now and join the many thousands already enjoying the benefits. Your tyres are essential for safe driving. They're the only link between your vehicle and the road. At Premier Tyres, we proudly stock leading tyre brands such as Goodyear, Michelin, Pirelli and more. We're also your go-to garage for MOTs, servicing, exhausts and all your mechanical needs. With the most affordable prices in town, unmatched quality, knowledgeable and fully qualified mechanics, we will look after your car no matter the make or model. Premier Tyres, Crown Street, WV1 1PX. Call 01902 455 684 or visit premiertyreservices.com.
Are you in receipt of benefits and looking for cavity wall or underfloor insulation? Did you know, with Northern Gas Heating, you could get a free boiler with the insulation measure of your choice? Call 0800 083 1000 or go to northerngasheating.com to see if you're eligible. It's a quick and easy assessment. Northern Gas Heating, celebrating over 20 years in the industry. We're proud to be the UK's local central heating company.
Pack Continental, your local best halal supermarket in Wolverhampton. Established for over 20 years, we pride ourselves on our fresh vegetables and fresh fruit. We have a variety of spices and lentils. We're also an award-winning Halal Butcher of the Year for 2 consecutive years. We supply excellent quality meat and poultry delivered fresh daily to our store. Visit us today at 1-3 Hunter Street, Wolverhampton, WV6 0QZ, or call 01902 717 792. Open 9am till 8pm Monday to Saturday and 10am till 6pm on Sundays. Go to RamadanRadioWolves.com and donate to your local mosque.
Welcome back to the second half of Going Beyond Wolverhampton. In the first half of our show, we spoke to Adnan Raja, and now we're going to speak to Nahed Ali, who is a history teacher currently in North London. Nahed, how are you doing?
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah. How are you, Akram? I'm good.
Yeah, alhamdulillah, it's all good here. It's a pleasure to have you on here, and I just wanted to have a chat with you about your experiences and any inspiration you could give to other people as well. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to ask is, you studied international relations at university, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so what made you choose IR? Because IR's, I'm not sure, like, when growing up, it was not an obvious thing to go and study. So, like, what made you want to go and study IR?
It's quite a long story, but just to sort of keep it succinct, I was initially interested sort of in 2014 during the Russian annexation of Crimea. A bit weird, but I was just sort of intrigued by the fact that, how and why can a nation just sort of walk in to its neighbor and militarily and take over. So that really triggered my interest when I was in year 11. But the problem was I never knew the subject. Like, I want to study global politics, but I don't know the name of it at university. So as in the degree. So the story goes, I was at a wedding and in 2014, and a guy by the name of Hassan, he was about 4 years older than me. Now we started talking about I didn't know this guy properly, still don't, but he was talking about, North Korea and, China, Russia and politics and Middle East and all that kind of stuff. And I asked him, what did you study at university? And he replied, I'm doing this degree called International Relations. And I was like, wait, what is that? And, he explained it's effectively global politics. Based on that meeting, my sort of journey with IR started.
What did you do in preparation? So now you know you want to study IR. What were you doing then in preparation to study IR at university?
In terms of my A-level subjects, I took subjects that were sort of most related to, sort of politics. So I did history, philosophy, and sociology. So I sort of picked those subjects. And another thing I did was, this wasn't really related to university. It was more of a personal sort of passion. Was I started a YouTube channel back in 2015, January the 1st, which was the date of initiation. I would just sort of make videos on whatever I learned. Now, initially, when I started, I was very, very sort of one-sided, sort of very pro-Russia at the time. But, as time went on, I sort of, you learn two sides of the argument, you get more sophisticated. But yeah, I would say I picked specific A-levels to answer your question, and I also engaged in a documentary project as a means of pursuing this path, the university.
Fair. So, like, you mentioned your documentary project there. Like, what was your aim about, like, documentary channel? Was it like to spread your knowledge to others, or was it for yourself to like learn more about specific like topics so you can make documentaries out of them?
For me, it was quite simple because initially there were videos, there weren't documentaries. Then the documentary, they sort of came in 2017 onwards. Now that happened because, firstly, I got better at editing, and secondly, I got better at research. And, I just thought I'd give it a crack, see how good I am at it. And alhamdulillah, it worked out quite well because the documentaries, in total, they've got around 1.9 million views.
MashaAllah.
Alhamdulillah. The main reason I made them was quite simply to inform people, whether you're students, whether you're, older people or whatever. It was just to inform people on, for example, the Vietnam War, the Cold War, World War II, topics of the Middle East and so on and so forth. So actually, a lot of my students, there's a cool story, not just my students, other students as well around the world, they do use a lot of the documentary in their work, which is quite nice. And I always get emails saying, can I use this for school history or whatever? And, it all relates to the purpose, which is, for me, it was about educating and informing people.
Okay. So now just moving on to like your experience after school. So I know that you went to LSE for university, and obviously you grew up in Darlaston. And what was it like, the transition like? So moving from Darlaston then to London, obviously they're very different places to live. So like, how did you find that transition initially?
Yeah, so I mean, Darlaston is a very quiet area. there's not very many opportunities. It's one thing that it's sort of known for, sadly. That's one of the reasons why I went to London, right? Because it's got all the universities, all the jobs, and so on and so forth. But when I went to London, for the first time I stepped in London in my whole life was in 2016 during the post-offer sort of LSE Open Day.
Okay.
And it was an overwhelming experience to say the least, because I don't know if you've seen the film Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah.
Where the old man, he spent 60 years in prison, and then he comes out of prison, I think maybe even 70, and he sees these sort of cars and all these new things, and it's a bit overwhelming for him. I honestly felt like that when I sort of, I was at Euston Station, and the first time got off the train, and there's a ticket sort of machine where you put the ticket through, and I'm sort of taking my time, and the people behind me, they're really sort of agitated, and I'm confused. I'm like, what are you agitated? I sort of learned later retrospectively that actually in London things move really quick. And I remember when I sort of came out the station and I saw, it was past 9, I think it was 9:30, so technically rush hour should be over. I saw loads of buses and people and noise and just everything. And for me personally, it was overwhelming. I always sort of compare it to the film Shawshank Redemption on that scene, if you remember it clearly. So yeah, coming from Darlington especially, it was a very different experience.
Was there anything else that you learned quickly when you were in London as compared to home?
What else did I learn? As in things that I learned to bring back, or just in general?
Yeah, things that you can learn to bring back maybe.
Yeah, so I think one thing that I noticed in London, which is a big positive, is there's a sort of bigger culture of sort of the youth in particular, sort of secondary school and sixth form kids. There's a lot more guidance, there's a lot more mentors, a lot more sort of, people willing to help, graduates willing to help younger people. And in Darlington, of course, that's lacking, and it's something that I'm really looking to hopefully not fix. Of course, I can't fix everything, but mitigate those problems. Which is effectively, going back to Darlington and helping, young people find the best university, sort of mentorship effectively. It's a big thing in London, I find, whereas in Darlington, it's just virtually non-existent. So it's something that I'm looking to bring back, of course, virtually, because I'll still be in London.
Yeah. Why do you think that is, though? Why do you reckon London is, a lot more advanced in this kind of aspect? I know because I'm from Wolverhampton myself, and, I agree, when I went to London, there was a lot more, mentoring and, these early, preparation stuff where people are still at school. Whereas where I was, there was very little of that. Do you know why that could be, maybe? Or is it just the fact that London is just a bigger city?
Yeah, so I think because working in a school, I can tell you straight away, I think there's a few things. Firstly, in most countries, the capital city will always get most of the sort of financial, social, and political attention. That's just sort of the way things are. Schools generally, they are better resourced in London somewhat. And I would say in particular, there's one big advantage London has, which is, it's got one of the highest concentrations of top universities in the world. You've got Queen Mary, you've got King, LSE, KCL, and a bunch of other ones, in one area. Whereas, where we're from, you've only really got BCU, UOB, Aston, and Wolverhampton, and what else? I really can't think of anything else in terms of the local area.
Yeah, there's nothing else apart from if Warwick could go a bit further, but that's towards Coventry. But yeah,
exactly. So I think it's because of the universities, that are in London. There's a greater opportunity for outreach.
So because you mentioned now you're a teacher, right? And this is you're trying to implement. So what made you go down the route of teaching?
Okay, this is an interesting story. So initially I was really embarrassed to be a teacher.
Oh, really?
Yes, because and it links to LSE actually, and the the positives of LSE was that you had ISARC, you had academically it was amazing, but the negatives of LSE, I must say, is the sort of heavy corporate culture. It's a bit too much sometimes. So I remember when I was at LSE, I one individual asked, so what do you want to go into? And I said teaching, and it was back in first year, and he looked at me and he was like, you can do better than that. I was like, what do you mean? You can earn more money than that. And it was at that point, almost that day actually, where I really realized what LSE was. And of course, it's not all doom and gloom. There are a lot of positives to it, but it's very, very corporate. So amidst that environment, I sort of concealed my desire to be a teacher, so much so that I by first year and even most of second year, I really wasn't, at least officially, publicly, I wasn't interested in teaching. I sort of, I was trying to get into, corporate law or, something corporate because, it's what everyone else did. And I remember in second year, sort of, I was in the cave, if you remember the cave in the Faith Centre.
Yeah.
And it was about 7 p.m. and I was applying to I don't know if you know Herbert Smith Freehills.
Yes, I do. Yeah, law firm.
And I remember I was applying to an internship, and I just I sort of made the application and then in the cave all alone, and I just thought to myself, why am I even doing this? I know I don't like this. I'm only doing it to please others, to please the the common culture, because it's very it's unmasked in a word, to go into teaching if you go to LSE. So, and I remember I made the application. I just sort of slammed the lid down on my laptop because I thought, you know what, this isn't me. I can't do this. I just can't. I can't do this. So I remember everyone's getting these internships in second year, as you might remember. It wasn't sort of out of spite. It was more so like, if everyone's getting an internship, you obviously want one yourself. And I didn't get any. And I remember I just thought, forget it, it's fine. Just stop thinking about it. But then second year summer, alhamdulillah, I managed to secure a really, really good job as a teaching assistant, which doesn't sound very impressive, but it was at a private summer school. And it was, alhamdulillah, probably one of the best jobs I've ever had, like in every way, money, experience, people. It was just an amazing job. And I remember I had a sort of epiphany in my second year sort of summer of university where, all my mates, they had all these great, sort of high profile internships at, really sort of big companies. And not all of them, but a lot of them, they didn't like it, and they would tell me, not all of them, some of them would tell me, how it's really like. And I remember the epiphany I had was like, I sort of did what I followed my passion as opposed to the crowd. And it paid off, because I really, really liked teaching. And even though I wasn't quite a teacher, I sort of unofficially was in many ways. And I loved it. So by my third year of university, that embarrassment was almost gone. I never made it public, but I just didn't really I wasn't really embarrassed anymore. I thought, right, I'm going to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
And for me, I wrote an article about this called The Teacher Who Changed My Life. And in that article, I briefly discussed why I went into teaching. It's because I want to replicate what, a certain teacher called George Greenbury did for me. He helped me quite a lot. Yeah, so effectively, why did I go into teaching? Because I want to replicate what one teacher did to me in terms of how he helped me. And of course, it was a difficult road in the sense that I had to battle this prevalent culture of money, sort of being at the forefront of any job decision.
Okay, that's interesting. Like I went to LSE as well. Like I had a very similar experience as well, where I was very overwhelmed and pressurized by the very corporate heavy culture there, and just applying to jobs and internships for the sake of it, even though I really didn't see myself in these positions. So obviously you've mentioned your passion for teaching as well, but how did you kind of block out this noise? Was it a struggle initially, as you mentioned?
Yeah. No, it was a massive struggle. I have to be completely honest. It was a monumental struggle. But the thing, like I said, that really helped me block it out was second year summer. When I saw these people, with these really good internships that I was craving, most of second year, and these same people were like, it's not that good. They don't like the manager, they don't like the nature of the work, or whatever. And then I contrasted that with my experience working in the education sector, which I absolutely loved it. I thought, you know what? Well, I think it's clear what I should do. Maybe I shouldn't obsess with this, corporate career. There's nothing wrong with corporate careers, of course. It's just personally not not my cup of tea. But in terms of, I must add this, a piece of advice that Iqbal Naseem gave when I was in third year university. It was a talk about careers. He said something that I'll never forget. He said, so when you're considering a career, this is advice for university students. You should consider 5 things. It's based on the Ikigai philosophy. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. But of course, we're Muslim, so we have to add our own twist to it. So the first thing is, is the job you're considering, is it halal? Is it permissible? Secondly, do you like what you're sort of doing? Thirdly, is it impactful? What you're considering doing, is it impactful? Does it help people? Fourthly, are you good at it? And the last one is, does it sustain you? The problem is with LSE in particular, but it's society in general, not just LSE, is we focus on the last one too much. Can it sustain us? Can it make us money? When actually there's 4 other criteria which you need to satisfy. Is it halal? Do you like it? Is it impactful? And are you good at it? Plus, of course, can it sustain you? So for me, it was like, that talk that he gave was revolutionary, actually, because I never really thought of it like that. So anytime I mentor sort of younger students, especially sort of university students, I always sort of mention that, as in I sort of tell the youngsters to follow that framework. Because I think, look, it's really easy because, when I was embarrassed to go into teaching, I used to tell people, I wanted to go and work in the charity sector, which is, still something that long term I may do. But the problem with the charity sector is, the last criteria, does it sustain you? Usually it's a no. You just don't get paid enough. So actually, I think, I'm not saying we shouldn't work in the charity sector. What I'm trying to say is when you're considering a career, make sure you balance the 5. It's no good saying, just do what you like if it's pay. So I think that's definitely a key piece of advice I would give to graduates regarding jobs, balancing those 5.
Yeah, fair. That's the first time I've heard of this Ikigai philosophy. But yeah, those are like 5 very good points to think of when you're choosing a job, definitely. So like, as a teacher, but like, what's it like being a teacher? It's like, so obviously, like when we go to school, like we see our teachers like they teach a lesson and we kind of hate them, or like, I'm not sure, depending on your relationship with teachers, you sometimes admire them. You got like your nice ones, you got your not so nice ones. So like, what's it like actually behind the scenes as a teacher? Like, how much work goes into it?
So being a teacher, I mean, just to put it really bluntly, it's an amazing job, because you're working with young people, and of course, for me, one of the greatest fears was after university was losing the knowledge that I'd gained about the world. That was a big fear of mine because when people go into the world of work, they often forget, and they're sort of all the stuff they've learned, or a lot of it. So one positive is, you retain that. I'll give you a really good example. After I've done this interview, I'll be planning a lesson on the modern Middle East. It's something that, with the teaching job, you don't forget. Does it behind the scenes, I think from my LinkedIn, and sort of Twitter, it seems a bit utopian as a job. You're working with kids and it's funny and it's all good. There are negatives. I'll say negatives. The workload is very, very intense. You will be expected to mark 240 papers every full term. You will be, expected to mark, the same amount of sort of in-class work. You will be expected to plan, lessons and, meet with parents and that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of work that goes into it.
And you mentioned like you're working with kids every day as well. Like, do you see yourself like as like a role model?
I'd refrain from using the term role model just because sort of I don't want to sort of appear messianic. That's the right word to use, But one thing I do find, I think because of my background, a lot of the kids, without sounding sort of arrogant and putting anyone else down, I do think they do appreciate me a lot more because sometimes I'll give you an example. So most of the naughtiest kids in my school, the absolute naughtiest ones, the ones that no one want to deal with, the ones who, every lesson they're getting parked meaning, you're kicked out. I've noticed, and I really don't want to sound arrogant, but But I do seem to have a really good connection, of course, with the smart kids as well, and the kids who want to do well, and the middle attainers, and also the ones who are really naughty. And I think one of the reasons is background. A lot of these kids, they have troubled backgrounds. Mom's not in their life, dad's probably not in their life, all sorts of horrific stories. And I think, not always, but sometimes I do sit these kids down just on a one-to-one basis. And I have an open and honest discussion about life and background and struggles and how to overcome them. And I think one of the amazing things about teaching is the pastoral side. It can also be a bit draining, but for me personally, having come from a somewhat difficult background myself, I understand the struggles that these kids go through. And when I tell some of the kids, not everything, but some of the things that I went through and how I overcame them, there's that sort of level of respect that you get. And and it's just really beautiful when you see a kid who's changing for the better because of your mentorship, for instance. So I think that's definitely one of the most rewarding aspects of the job.
So we've talked about like what you're doing currently and like looking back on things. Now I want to look towards the future as well. So like in 5 years' time, where do you see yourself?
Likely I will stay in the education sector. But in an ideal world, I would personally want to implement my philosophy, more deeply of teaching, which is the idea of training them young. So, often at times, having worked in the private sort of education sector, I've realized something that actually, the question of, right, what are you going to do when you're 18? A lot of the private school kids, they are confronted with that question in year 10. So they have a lot of time to, think about it, to explore. Whereas in the state sector, a lot of the times our kids, they're confronted with that question quite late, let's say sort of first year A-level, near the end of it. So they make a sort of abrupt decision there and then, which often isn't the best choice sort of for them long term. So going back to the point, what do I want to go into? I want to, this whole idea of asking kids, right, what do you want to do when you're 18 in year 10? I want that to be sort of my full-time job. If there's a name for that role, I'm not sure. Because at the moment, I'm trying to do that while teaching full-time. I am putting kids on, summer schools, and I am helping with UCAS applications, certain kids, and so on and so forth. But I would love to do that on a more sort of full-time basis.
So that's bringing us to a close of our interview. But like, is there any like parting wisdom you want to give to our audience? Like,
oh God, there's so much. I don't know where to start. I would just say, for the youth in particular, because I think, it's what most of the discussion has revolved around. I would say, regarding your education, you need to have like a purpose. Why are you going to school? If you don't have a reason, you need to get a reason, because, I always compare it to a ship. Imagine you have a ship with, it's got loads of fuel. In our case, fuel is motivation, but it's got no destination, to sort of aim for. It almost becomes pointless. So when it comes to your education, you need to have a long-term reason. If you're in year 10, year 11, year 12, like, have a reason. Is it a career that you want to get into? Is it, to impress your parents, which that's a perfectly valid reason. The reason it's important to have, a why is because when times get tough, and they inevitably will, you need, that why will get you through it, because it's what transformed my educational experience.
Okay, so yeah, that brings it to a wrap here. Thank you very much, Nahid, for coming on today.